Well, welcome on the podcast today, Drummond.
Thank you.
How are you feeling today?
Today is good.
Mm.
Today is everything's in the right direction.
Yeah, would you
Did-
tell would you tell me if you were feeling good?
I think I would. No, I'm generally quite good like that. Probably maybe to a fault. With people I'm close to, I don't mind being very honest about things. I think I'm always been quite un-British like that. Generally the Brits, we like to say the F word.
Yeah.
Fine. Right? Everything's fine. I'm fine. Work is fine. But I like to be generally a bit more genuine,
Mm.
you know?
With your career, right? I think sometimes do you think it's a bit difficult to be honest?
It's a really good question. So there's an incredible magician mind reader in the UK called Darren Brown.
I know, Darren Brown. Yeah.
So he has a great quote. He says, "We're always inherently dishonest, but we're always honest about our dishonesty."
Mm.
Right? And so there's something, obviously, some people would see magic as dishonesty. I think it depends entirely on how you decide to use that, right?
Mm.
There are people who use these same techniques to exploit people, to cheat at cards, to manage all sorts of ill-gotten activities. But I think for me, I don't know. I've always, like I say, I say it how it is. I never really hide behind much. So, good day, bad day, it's coming out,
Mm.
you know.
So I want to bring you back to what was it like growing up for you?
Whole bunch of things. Grew up in the UK, and magic was my whole thing. As a kid, I was just, that was it. That was the whole lot. I was never into sports. I wanted so badly to be into football like the other kids
Mm.
with all their sticker books, and they knew all the names of the players. And I tried so hard to learn the players' names and follow the football matches. And I just, it never spoke to me, and I could never click into that. So magic was everything. Academically, I had no real interest in the subjects we were taught,
Mm.
but there was something about cards and magic and the history of magic, the myths around magic, the history of what magic has always been, the different ways that different cultures have looked at magic. Ancient Egypt to me was a huge thing that I would look into, and ghosts and UFOs and all these very strange esoteric spaces, sort of mystical spaces, I would just dive into and dissolve into. And then when I was about 8, my father took me to a magic shop in London, and it was this beautiful old, fourth generation, same family. It survived World War I, World War II, and very sadly went under in COVID. It went under and is now no more. But it was underneath the bank where he was working, Coutts Bank.
Yeah, so your
originally.
family come from they were in the banking, right?
So yeah, Coutts Bank,
Mm.
founded initially in the 1600s. That's my father's family. So it's one of the older private banks in the UK, and my father was there, and generations before him, his uncle was chairman, and like this, it goes back for generations. And it just so happens that this fourth generation magic shop was underneath the main headquarters. So when I was 8 years old, my father took me there, and he bought me a deck of cards, and he bought me the catalog, this incredible red, thick catalog, which would detail all the tricks that they sold, and with little images, little hand-drawn images. And so I'd pour through the catalog and look at what I was going to save up for the next trip.
Mm.
But when I went there the first time, I suddenly realized that I could learn to create magic for other people, and magic had always given me so much. I turned to my father and I said, "But if you could learn magic to give people this experience of magic, then why would you do anything else?"
Mm.
And it's something that I still hold on to. It's such a beautiful gift to have people experience these wonderful things. So from 8, I realized that you could learn these things, and then just poured into that. And then at 13, between 13 and 18, my best friend at school was himself a magician. And so the two of us developed very quickly. We'd bunk off sports and we'd sit down and we'd practice and we'd critique each other and help each other develop.
Mm.
And so by 18, we were far ahead of, I would imagine, most people our age. And he's super academic, super bright, and is now teaching, in fact, back at that same school. And I just could never look at anything else but magic. So that's been my journey.
What does your parents think, I suppose, when magic, when you come from a family of bankers, I suppose, the royal family bank there, right?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. I
Yeah.
believe. I believe.
Or should I say this, or should I know this?
I don't know.
Knowledge.
I don't know. I believe when my father was there,
Mm.
the Queen famously
Yeah.
would bank at Coutts. My father said there was a black taxi. I don't know if this is even common knowledge, but there was a black taxi that was in the vaults. It was kept in the vaults because the main headquarters in London, the main Coutts headquarters, is just up from Buckingham Palace. And so they had a custom taxi made. And because there are no ATMs in the palace, but of course they need cash for the staff, all kinds of things. Once a week, this specially made bulletproof black taxi would come out of Coutts Bank, out of the car park, and drive down the Mall to Buckingham Palace and deliver this, sack of money. And then I remember one day he took us down to the vaults, and they had all these old wooden. It was like Gringotts, the bank in Harry Potter.
Mm.
Old wooden crates with old stickers on them, and 100-year-old crates. And the lady said to us, if they're not claimed, they legally can't touch them. So they just sit there. If somebody dies and the family don't know about what's been left in the vault, then it just sits there for decades. And so they have all manner of mysterious boxes there. So it was always fascinating to go there. And like I say, that had just happened to also be really the birthplace of my journey in magic.
Mm. So when did the discussion come to your father where you're like, I want to be a magician?
Yeah, it was a
What kind of
I think a
conversation is that?
sequence of conversations. So I went to Eton College, which is very old, 1440, was founded in 1440. Very probably prestigious school. I was there and then went to university. And of course, most of my friends were going to banking, finance, insurance, law, some variation of these, the major professions. Oxbridge, very grown up life choices. And if you'd put a gun to my head at 15, I would have said it's going to be magic. There was nothing else that spoke to me. And so when I left at 18, I went traveling for a year. I went actually to work for Goldman Sachs for 6 months. Then I went traveling for 6 months. And I went across India and Southeast Asia looking for magicians everywhere. By the time I came back, I was 19. And I just knew that was it. The magic. It just had to be magic. There was so much out there. So much. So many dimensions to magic. Culturally, again, around the world. The different interpretations of magic. I performed in all kinds of crazy warehouses and just curious places for all different types of people. I just couldn't sit and do something grown up. It was like I'd bitten from the apple and and that was it. It was all decided. So it was never something I battled with. It's been so many challenges to make this professionally successful. Magic is not easy by any means, but the decision itself was never something that I struggled with. There was just never any other option. I tried Goldman Sachs.
What was it like working in Goldman Sachs?
It just wasn't for me. I remain like this. I did 6 months at Goldman's. I did 6 months at Merrill Lynch in Madrid. And I still fail to grapple with the core essence of finance, the principles of finance. And it just wasn't for me. And I have, friends doing incredibly well in that space. It just wasn't something that gripped me. And like I say, you sit there dreaming about magic, thinking about magic, looking at magic online, planning the next project, whatever it's going to be. And so it just felt, when you have something that can bring such joy to people, it would have felt like a real, I felt something that would have, to me, been something very dishonest. Sitting on something that brings such joy to people, but going off and really serving myself in the name of a stable salary, So it was literally running away with the circus. And there were discussions, but I think, my parents really have always been incredibly supportive of it. And I think probably very early on twigged that there was just no discussion here. When I left university, I climbed Kilimanjaro with my father. And, it's 5 or 6 days and it's lots of walking. And so there's lots of conversations. And there was one day when he said to me, "What is plan A?" And I said, "Plan A is magic." And then we walked on another few minutes. And he was sort of absorbing, this was me coming out of university into the big wide world. And he said, "Okay." He said, "And what's plan B?" And I don't remember this, but he says that I said plan B is to make plan A work. And that's it. And it sort of chimes with how it's always been. I just never look left and right, no matter how difficult it gets. It's just always been magic.
Can you bring me back to your first experience with having a magic show? What did that look like, and how is it different to today?
Well, it's funny because in some ways it's completely different, and yet at the same time it's the same thing. You're sat there with 3 people. Sometimes I'll do a show and I'll fly somewhere and it's 4 people sat around a table, and sometimes it's 1,000 people or 6,000 people, but the essence is always the same. It's you with an audience of any size. So that's never really changed. But those early days, it was just, I said to someone the other day, it's like getting the keys to an ice cream van, right? When you love ice cream, someone gives you the keys and says, "You can just drive around and give this away. You can just hand this to people." And so as you get into magic, it's incredibly intoxicating. That early rush, those early years of getting into magic, when you're learning so much and you're coming across new methods and techniques and little secrets. And, back then it was very difficult. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have, really, the internet was quite early then. So I learned from books that were very hard to find. Most magicians might print a few hundred copies, something like that, maybe 1,000 copies, but that's it. Otherwise, it would be mostly bootlegged VHS tapes, those black cassette tapes. And you'd have to find people on eBay, or you'd have to hunt people down on these very basic message boards and say, "I'll trade you this video for this, or this prop for this book, or this pamphlet," or whatever it would be. So a lot of learning, but it just starts so organically. You start with friends at school, and then somebody has a birthday and you do something at the birthday, and then their aunt is having a dinner the next week, and then their brother's having a wedding. And so it's been such tiny baby steps, every step. And of course today is much more multidimensional, and it goes in all different directions, but the core essence of it all is exactly the same thing. I sit in front of people and work to give them the experience that magic always gave me. And that's unchanged.
Growing up, how was it with the community around you? Did anyone ever question your ability to be a magician?
Community meaning?
In terms of your peers, like friends
Oh, yeah.
in school?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's such not everyone wants to be a magician.
No, precious few, I think. Famously, Etonians they're a tough crowd, right? There's a very arrogant reputation to a lot of Etonians, which is not unfounded at all. So you have these very wealthy, privileged, 1,200 boys. You have 260 boys in each year. You have 26 boarding houses, and each house has 50 boys. So when you go to Eton and you're 13, you're in a house you've got 10 in your house in your year, and then 4 lots of 10 boys older. And it's a tough
gig.
audience because, as I say, a lot of them are very privileged, very wealthy. A lot of them came from schools. So there are a few feeder schools into Eton. So you'll have, I forget the names, but you have these boarding school, these smaller schools, and 30 boys will come from that school into this one year, or 25 boys from over here. Whereas I came from this little prep school in Sussex, and I was the only one. So magic was something there's a great fascination for, and I go back every now and then. The boys, they still love magic. At Eton, there's a little magic club, and I just last week sent them a whole bunch of my playing cards, which just gives me so much joy, because I remember what that would have been at that age, new cards, new ideas. So it's great to go back as and when I can, but as much as there is that appetite, they're a tough bunch. They're a pretty direct bunch. And I was that strange, weird kid who wasn't sporty, wasn't bright, wasn't particularly sociable. Magic was just my thing. And so I've always thought, if you can pull things off in front of 10, 50, 100 public school boys, then it's downhill from there, British people famously are quite, they're not huge believers in magic. There's that quite pragmatic British approach to life, cynical. So, a lot of the time when you're young, you show magic to somebody and they say, oh, that's very clever. Oh, well done. Oh, it's very smart. It doesn't come with that, let's say, American energy. Right? You go to America, it's much more big reactions, big smiles. And then culturally, you go to India, you go to East Africa, you go to the Far East, you go to Mexico, and that cultural interpretation changes completely according to culture, history, how magic has always been seen in that culture, the Middle East, famously. So it was a tough crowd, but again, by the time you're 18 and I'd had 5 years of that, you've had a lot of the hard knocks, and you've had the boys 2-3 years older who want to really bruise you and really, pull it apart. And
How did you manage to push around the negativity?
I think it was just, you're just being pulled. It's like a moth to a light. And it's how it's always been for me with magic. So many challenges, and COVID just kneecapped every magician in the, as well as many other industries. Overnight, it was illegal to do magic in a room with an audience. So every magician in the world overnight became, well, that was it. That's just sit tight, sit on ice for 2 years, wherever you were in the world. But it's just the joy of when it goes right, largely most of the time, the joy of it when it's great is worth every wrinkle and every little setback and every little stumbling stone along the way. So for me, the dreams that I have I've always been a fantasist with magic, and I've always dreamed of not just making it a commercial success, but creating real projects with it and really trying to take it beyond just gigs, survival money and just getting by. For me, it's always been attempting having much bigger missions than that. And that really just pulls you through all the challenges, all the difficult people, all the doubts, those sorts of things. It happens, but I guess what I've really come to, when people challenge magic, if you're performing for a group or specific individuals, if they want to challenge it or make it difficult for you, it's sort of on them, right? There are people who love magic, and a lot of the time, the most intelligent people I've ever met have most often been the ones who love magic most, because they understand everything. They know the world so well, so intricately. They are mathematicians, scientists, physicists, historians. They understand so much. And magic so tickles them because it's an unusual experience,
Mm.
right? Whereas on the flip side, a lot of the people who really challenge magic either have seen terrible magicians in their past, which I understand. You know, they're out there, just really bad jokes, bad magic, just gauche, strange energy,
Mm.
not very impressive, which is fine. And I always understand that. But the people who really struggle and have to try to make trouble, it's most often those sorts, it's who you'd, it's those people who go to an incredible movie and point out the CGI.
Yeah.
You can't sit and enjoy something. You have to be the smart or come across like the smart Alec.
That's often a reflection of someone themselves. There's
Much-
an insecurity
exactly-
there, and
exactly that.
they're trying to pull the other person down a lot of the time.
100%. 100%. So in that sense, I think once you get to that point, it stops becoming personal. You just say, right, we'll wrap this up and we move on. So yeah, it's pretty rare.
With magic, do you feel like you're ever dancing with your health and safety in terms of going for the next big thing? Because I've seen you do some crazy stunts.
Yeah. Typically not so much. So the Netflix show, it was a whole backstory, but the Netflix show, Death by Magic, was 8 episodes. We filmed in 5 countries, recreating the stunts that killed magicians, real stories. So I did a stunt. I had a global series with National Geographic. The apex episode of that was a very dangerous stunt, which itself was I was reattempting a stunt that went wrong on a golf commercial. So I was almost pulled apart by 2 golf buggies at Gleneagles Hotel. My producer on Nat Geo said we should attempt that on television and do it much bigger. So we then created what's called Torn Apart, which was me on a runway.
I watched this video.
Seen this?
I've watched this video, and you know what? I was watching videos even last night. I'm thinking I can't go to sleep.
Yes. No, it's I still watch that video. I still get hot flushes when I think about it. And it was a really horrible thing to do, but it made, because of the backstory and the fact that truly was almost pulled apart by 2 golf buggies in front of 100 people at the Gleneagles Hotel in Scotland.
Can you tell the listener what you did?
So it was part of a golf commercial which we did for the European Golf Tour, and it went on to get millions of views, 3-4 million views on YouTube. And it was a great project, and we came up with all these ideas, but this was my first big project like this, commercial project, filming project. So we came up with these lovely ideas and little card ideas and catching a golf ball, things like this. And the idea for the ending was to escape being torn apart by 2 golf buggies. So it was almost the last thing we shot on the project. And it was right up at the hotel, on the gravel in front of the hotel. And all the players came up, we had all these cameras. And for a bunch of reasons, our safety mechanism wasn't going to work. Just, it was raining and things went wrong. And it's always the case. We either had to sack the whole thing off or we had to do it for real. 100% for real. We had to tie the ropes to the metal frame of the buggy and do it for real. And I was young, and I was probably 24, 25, and just keen to impress. And I said, we'll do it for real. And we hadn't rehearsed. We had no rehearsal. And effectively, they set the buggies off. There was a rope in front of me, rope behind me.
Your family was there, right?
Not at that time. My mother came to the later one.
Yeah.
But I just misjudged it, and I was gauging from the rope in front, and I didn't see the rope behind me was shorter, or this buggy behind me was faster. Something went wrong, and I basically, as I let go of this rope, the front rope off this arm, this elbow was whipped out behind me, and I was just lifted off my feet, dragged down the tarmac, blood everywhere, clothes were cut, just complete disaster. Nobody knew what to do. Didn't know if this was what was meant to happen. And it was very bad, and there was blood everywhere, but it was also, I never saw the footage. We deleted the footage on the spot, I think for lawsuits. And I actually hadn't signed my contract. They rushed over to me with the contract to sign literally as this happened, because I think it was suddenly legal alarm bells. But what
year was this?
What was it? It must have been 12, I think, 2012. I think. And it's still on YouTube. The whole thing is
Yeah.
what made it into the edit is still on YouTube. I think it's called Magicians, and the video. And what kept me up for a long time was the fact that it was bad, but I was a second and a half from having a golf buggy go this way and a golf buggy go this way at 30 kilometers an hour each, and both of my elbows being attached to ropes. And then I don't even know what the human body does, but I was a second and a half, 2 seconds from something coming off, basically. And that's what kept me up for years. I still, if I think about it too much, it's still, if I'm going to sleep, I have to force myself to think about something else. But then my producer on Nat Geo said, look, it's terrible, poor you, but it's also a great story. So we could supersize this and we could do it with 7-ton trucks on a runway and make it much bigger. And we can invite your mother. So why don't we get her down with 100 people on a runway? And so that's what, again, it's on YouTube. It's called Torn Apart.
Torn apart, yeah.
And that was then, like I say, the climax of the Nat Geo series, which did very well. And then off the back of that, Netflix made an approach and said, this really dangerous thing works really well. Could you do 8 of these? So we then started looking into these stories, and there's just tragically real stories. And we found many more. We found probably 20 stories of magicians dying through history all around the world, attempting these very dangerous things. And back in the day, vaudeville, I think the difference back then was, in the absence of filming, you would have to go to a town, you'd do something big and dangerous, and then that town would buy all the tickets to your live show that night. But the next day you're in another town. You got to do it again. And you do it again. You're not filming it once with 50 safety crew. You're doing it every single, multiple times a week for decades, right? Whatever this stunt might be. And you just need one. You need one person one day to be hungover, just not focused, whatever it is, and things unravel. And so Netflix was really a eulogy to these people, these extraordinary people with their extraordinary stories. And some of them are very recent. I met the children of a man who died burying himself under concrete in a Perspex, homemade Perspex coffin. And the coffin collapsed under the weight of the concrete, and his whole family were there. A horrendous story. But again, there's footage on YouTube. So I met his family as part of the show. And then, there was a chap in South Africa who died. He was run over by a car. And they think suffered from a heart attack as part of an escape. One of Houdini's friends, the great Lafayette, died in a fire on stage in Edinburgh. So we went back to the theatre that is still there. They rebuilt it. So there's all these incredible stories you just ordinarily wouldn't have heard of. People know Houdini, but they don't know a lot of his contemporaries or people who were at a huge level in their time, who just one day something went wrong and that was it. So Netflix was very much a eulogy to those people. But then when I finished that, but then out of the 8 episodes, I had to go to paramedics 3 times, and we had 2 of them, the 2 with fire, just both went wrong in their own ways in rehearsals. And so I think,
How did it go wrong?
Just the usual, just
the usual. I love the way you're like, oh, just the usual.
Well,
it's like,
it's something they call the cheddar, I think the Swiss cheese thing.
yeah.
Right? Have you heard about this? When these things line up, right? And so it's always that. Same with anything, right? It's
You expose yourself to so many situations, something has to go wrong.
Well, it's just so many threads in the tapestry of each stunt, right? And this can be the same for any major project. It's seldom one big clumsy thing happens. It's 5 or 6 little frayed edges all come together and it all falls apart. And so the 2 stunts we did with fire, one we filmed in Los Angeles, one we filmed in India, just went wrong in the most horrendous ways. And again, was lucky but unlucky, but could have been so much worse. And we had people fired and sent back the next day. India, we had 2 people fired on the spot, and they were put on a plane the next day, and that was it.
What happens in those situations, like mentally, what are you going through when things go wrong?
It's just the India thing for me. I don't know why I knew the India stunt where I'm in a cage and I'm tied up and the cage is suspended by burning ropes, and it's over a pontoon in the middle of a lake with burning spikes. So it's a crazy visual, and the smell of gasoline was horrific. It was so, all the propane coming out of 50 old rusty Indian propane tanks beneath me, and you smell it, and you're in the heat of the flames, the smoke, and I didn't speak to anyone I couldn't speak to people that whole day. And my mother flew out as part of the episode because her father had his first ever journalistic article. He was a journalist for 75 years before he died, but his first ever article was about the Indian rope trick. So we flew out my mother to talk about that. And I said to her, please don't come this evening. I just had a sense that something wasn't gonna go right. And often on the show, we would film with two audiences because you would never have enough rehearsal time, and invariably something goes wrong. So you'd need two goes at it, two live audiences, so you could reset and do it again. And a lot of the time we would have to use that because the first one went wrong so badly. And the India one just went there was just a miscommunication, simple miscommunication, but there was also just someone probably not in a role that they shouldn't have been in, and probably not qualified for a stunt of this scale and danger. And again, a sequence of smaller things happened, and it just went wrong, and I lost my mind. I was in a cage on my back, tied up. I could feel the flames on my back, the ropes, burning ropes underneath me. Couldn't move, couldn't get out of the ropes. I had swords holding me in place. And I lost my mind. I'd never been in that place. And clearly it's a magic show, and people think it's all Hollywood, it's all whatever. But I'm in a cage. The crane was older than me. Took 50, 60 seconds to get me down to the ground. There was nothing anyone could really do. It just went as wrong as can be. And I just, eventually we sorted it out. I got down on the ground. I took off my mic pack, and I just walked off down the lake into the black. And I sat on a rock, and I sat there trying to calm down and breathe and get my mind back.
What's going through your mind?
It's just so many things, because one part of you says, I'm never going to do that again. The other part of you says, look, you have to. These big shooting days, you'd have 100 crew. They'd be $200,000 days, right? With all the production. And you have no option. Every episode has to finish. And, 2 days later, we're flying from India, we flew to London, then Edinburgh. So the schedule there's no margin. So you just have to. There's no option here. So I sat on this rock, and I just went through some breathing, and then just walked back, put the mic pack back on. They'd got the next audience back into position. And then you see me walk out, the one in the show, the Indian episode, when I walk out, that's about 20 minutes after I'd had this complete meltdown. And I just, like never before in my life. And I walk out, and you smile, and you talk to them in Hindi, and you present the piece as though it's all going to go right. You don't know if it's the same thing's going to happen. And we got lucky, and that one was then smooth, and that's what's in the show. But the behind the scenes on that show, you wouldn't believe. And somebody said now Netflix film a lot of their big productions, they actually have a BTS crew who are just filming behind the scenes stuff, because a lot of it's so incredible.
Yeah.
And it's a shame we didn't have it, but that show just took me to the edge of everything in so many ways. And then I think we all got to the end of it and said, amazing experience, love everybody involved, but let's not attempt this again.
So this might be a bit of a silly question, but are you willing to sacrifice your life for magic?
Not as such, not in the sense of dying in a stunt, but for a long time now, I've said I'll give everything I have through the course of my life to magic in many different ways. And we're now working on a number of projects, which will be very, very long-term projects. So I'm committed to magic in that sense, like a priest is committed to the faith, right? I have given my life to this. There's nothing else outside of this. This is number one in everything that I do. Every decision that I make is it pivots around magic. So moving to the Middle East, moving my whole life here after COVID was purely a magical decision, was purely governed by magic, because I had a Disney show signed going into COVID. We signed the contract the first week of COVID, first week of lockdown, March 2020, after 8 months. So it was confirmed in August 19. March 20, we signed huge show, Disney Plus, Disney's first ever magic show. 15 months after the beginning of COVID, we lost the whole show. And I just thought, I don't want to go back to Los Angeles. It's not where I want to be. I've done London. It's as much as I want to. I looked into India. I wanted to move. I actually spent 6 months in India in 2021, looking into being there. And then decided actually Dubai is really the place for this. And historically, magic has always been a very sensitive topic here. I don't know if you know, but the word for magic in Arabic is sihr. And sihr is much closer to voodoo, in the sense that in English, magic means all these wonderful things. It can mean very wonderful things. You can have the magic of Disney, right? The magic of our dreams, the magic of love, the magic of whatever it might be, forgiveness. But then you have black magic, and you have spiritual magic, and you have there are 57 meanings of what magic is within English. But in Arabic, as I understand it, there's one, and it's much closer to voodoo. It's a very dark thing. Sihr in the Quran is written about in very negative terms. So as a result of that, magic has never really culturally been something here. There haven't been magicians through history, performing magicians, because the whole concept is so wrapped up in this Quranic interpretation of the word. And so I had this wild idea when we lost Disney, and I was looking at the world, and I was thinking, what's the next chapter? Again, I don't just want to do gigs. I just not just flying here and doing a show and flying here. What's the big picture? And I said, what could be more wonderful than help bring magic to a part of the world where it basically doesn't exist. And people here haven't really seen this sort of magic. And so I moved here 15 months ago, and it's very early in the journey, but really now we're putting our boots on and getting to work, and there's a whole long-term vision. But there's so many reasons that I believe this part of the world, Dubai specifically, can become the new Vegas, in the sense, the greatest magicians in the world famously live in Vegas. But I go to Las Vegas, and it doesn't, to me, represent magic, right? It's 2-liter cocktail glug cups, and the streets are filthy, and it's gambling, and people smoking indoors, and old people on slot machines, and it's all to me, the antithesis of what magic should be. And I just have this vision, be it 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, of the greatest illusion shows in the world being here and being done at a level they've never been done before. And as I would say in my live show, I had this residency at the Emirates Palace last year in Abu Dhabi. And I would always close my show by saying, it's almost an unspoken Emirati mentality that anything is possible. That I believe there's a Sheikh Mohammed quote that says, the word impossible is not in our lexicon, right? We don't embrace that word. It doesn't exist. And the UAE is a part of the world where the impossible is made possible. And so looking at all these pieces and how they could weave together, I just said, look, it's a barren landscape in terms of magic. It doesn't exist here. What could be more beautiful than helping develop that culture and teaching the children here these beautiful, how to give these experiences to other people and creating these beautiful shows. And so that's been the dream.
What makes a magician successful?
I always say magic is like music, in the sense that nobody's born Nobody's born able to play the scales and arpeggios and chords over a piano or a guitar or anything like this. What you're born with is the passion that pushes you through those 10,000, 20,000 hours to get to a real level of proficiency. And I think it's the same with magic. No one's born capable. I was terrible when I started, and your hands shake and your hands sweat and you're terrified. You stand in front of 10 people or 100 people, whatever it is. Everybody's terrible. I remember when we finished Netflix, I did a skydiving course, and I did about 36 jumps. And I remember my instructor saying, every single one of us barely slept the night before our first jump. It's the same thing, right? Everybody starts from that same position. It's who pushes themselves through those first 10 jumps until you find a level of comfort with it, right? Same thing in magic. Everybody begins just naive. It's that, what is it that people say? It's that there's a graph of sort of when you begin, you don't even know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
It's just complete
Mm.
ineptitude, but it's sort of unconscious ineptitude because you don't know how much you don't know. And then you begin to learn and then appreciate how much you don't know. And so all it is really in terms of becoming proficient, and I think 10,000 hours really for anything is quite light. You know, if you think it's 8 hours a day for a couple of years, 3, 4 years, it's just that innate passion that pushes you through those years of dedication. And that's it. And if you can do that, then you come out the other side and you've studied it from all different angles. An artist will have studied all the different drawing styles.
Mm.
A musician will have studied jazz and blues and classical music and pop music and then be able to weave things together. But there's nobody 2 days in who's anything approaching proficiency, right? I think it's just the passion. And if you have that, then you can more quickly get to a place where you're then very good.
What kind of obstacles do you face mentally when it comes to magic? Is there any real obstacles that you face?
I'd say it's almost the obstacles that I've faced. It's almost the opposite, because by dint of the fact that one becomes a magician, you're a dreamer, you're a fantasist. Anything is possible, right? So, you know, where I've probably failed over the course of the last 20 years, where I've failed most, it's probably been when I just try to shoot for the moon. You just go for something so wild and so no one's ever done this before. You leap for something so high and then invariably sometimes come crashing down. Sometimes you get there or you get close. But I would say the greatest obstacle often is just being too much of a dreamer and your feet come off the ground and you detach from what is realistically possible.
Mm.
And look, coming here to what is as good as a continent, right? The Gulf region, and say, I want to help develop magic here for the very first time, when there is deep set cultural and historical resistance to the concept of magic. It's a wild notion. And coming out of COVID, when, again, COVID was just a terrible time, you know, in terms of losing the show and not being able to work, coming out of that and then saying, I'm going to aim for the most unlikely thing I've ever aimed for. Just like I aimed to get a Netflix show and go to America, just like I aimed to get the Nat Geo show in the first place, or even become a magician, professional magician. I think aiming for these very, very unlikely things is most often what's led to setbacks.
Mm.
But as I'm sure as you found, there's no great achievement without great dreams and great ambitions and great desires. And so it's that beautiful thing. You chart where you want to get to and you just build your wings on the way down.
Mm.
You just, okay, well, this won't work. I'll try this. We try this. We try this. You fail your way to success. You set the mission as something so unlikely. Anybody around you says, well, look, just come back a little bit. But you say, no, I'll knock on this door, try this. And if that doesn't work, well, we'll come over here 3 months later and try this. And maybe it's a year and a half, but then I'll find a door here, which does lead me to that. And you see this in so many cases. And in fact, as part of the Disney show when it was on in that year and a half period, I read every biography on Walt Disney. And he just embodied all of that. It was almost the greatest training for all of this, because Walt Disney was just this absolute fantasist. He just dreamed up the craziest things. And what a lot of people don't know, when he was 15, he was a magician. He had a double act with his best friend. And he would save up for magic tricks, and he'd save up for art supplies. And at some stage he had to choose, and he chose art. And that's the way he went. But he was a very similar dreamer. And all kinds of crazy people who just, you set your sights on something so unlikely. Everybody around you says you're mad. And for a long, long time, sometimes forever, the doubters are right. But every now and then, there's that little break in the clouds, and you shoot through it. And you get there, or you get very close to there. Delusion, I think, is a huge ingredient in great achievements, right? You have to.
Do you know, I don't know if you've ever heard the saying, but delusions destroy us. But I think delusions are destiny.
Yes. Yeah.
With you being so visionary and you're on a mission to dream really big, how has that impacted your relationships?
Magic is a very demanding mistress, right? Magic's always been my number one, and I'm very clear with everyone about this. I put magic number one because the positive impact that this can have on people, the dreams that I have, the ambitions that I have, and what we're now building will positively impact so many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in the long term, that I know it's the right choice. Even if personally it's a challenge for all kinds of reasons. Pre-COVID, I've lived now out of a suitcase. I'm still in an apartment here, which I jump in and out of. I haven't lived in one place since I went to Netflix to LA in 2017. Since then, I've been this itinerant. I've been on this journey without ever saying this is my home. And of course, within that, personal life is more difficult. I think, being based here now for the first time, there's real stability, and I have a wonderful girlfriend, and it's a really wonderful moment where I'm so committed to Dubai, and I'm so committed to what we're going to build here, that for the first time in years, I can have some semblance of a social life and a personal life, things like this. But for all those years before, it was just impossible, because I'd be in Los Angeles for 6 months, then I'd be in India for 3 months, and then you have a gig here, and you stay there for 2 weeks, and then you come over here, and I loved that. I loved that unpredictability, but the scale of what we're now looking to build and achieve needs real focus. And so I've said, right, Dubai, I'm selling right now my home in London. I'll buy in Dubai and really lock in. And this is where the focus will be for the foreseeable.
What's the next big goal?
It's sort of what will be the rest of my life. And I wish if this was a few months on, I could tell you all about it. But it's something that I've done everything that I ever wanted. In the 30 years I've been doing magic, I've done just about everything and more that I ever dreamed of as a kid, or could have dreamed of as a kid. And so the next project is not for me. And so it's very early days, and it's been a crazy journey even to this moment. But I want to launch it this summer, and then we can talk more and have you involved in some way. But that's something that'll for easy as the next 15, 20 years of my life. This is everything. It's my whole baby. And it's just 7 days a week, sun up to sundown right now.
I can't wait to hear about it.
Very exciting.
Off the camera.
Yes.
Because it's the Detached podcast.
Yes.
I have the traditional question. What would you detach yourself away from that's limiting you today?
I would say, well, anybody around me would say crazy dreams and fantasies, right? Just these crazy ideas. But again, back to the point, it's sort of what really fires me up is having these impossible, super unlikely dreams and ambitions. I don't think I don't think there's much. I certainly in the past there was a whole laundry list of those things, and
As you get older, I think the laundry starts to go out.
yeah, it's just I did a lot of work in my 20s, a lot of reading, a lot of
Mm.
introspection, and I'm really happy with where things are at. It's been incredibly difficult, but that's just because it's a difficult journey, and things are really right now very exciting, and I feel people around me, I'm sure, would disagree, but I feel very peace with where things are and where they're headed, if that's not a total cop-out answer.
No, that was an amazing answer. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you. It's fair.